Have you ever had the feeling that something was deeply wrong? Not just out there in the world, but in here within us. That maybe at some level we're all broken, selfish, even evil. That old haunting narrative, humans are born evil. It's everywhere. Preached in sermons, whispered in cultural myths, etched into the foundation of major belief systems. That the human heart is deceitful, that babies are born with sin, that without rules or guilt, we'd all spiral into chaos. But what if that wasn't the full truth? What if we've been taught to fear our own nature? Not because it's inherently dark, but because someone needed us to believe it was. Stick around, because this video might just flip everything you thought you knew about human nature and reveal how Carl Jung, one of the most profound thinkers of the 20th century, saw through the illusion. We've been conditioned for centuries to view ourselves through a lens of suspicion, that unless we're controlled, corrected, or spiritually cleansed, we'll destroy each other. That deep inside we're selfish, narcissistic, manipulative. And it begs the question, if this is truly our nature, then how do we explain the spontaneous kindness of strangers, the innocence of a newborn, the soul-aching empathy we feel when someone else suffers? Carl Jung didn't buy the whole inherently evil narrative. Not in the way we've been taught. He saw the human psyche as a vast, mysterious landscape full of shadows, yes, but also of light, potential, and wholeness. He believed that evil isn't something we're born with. It's something we become when we disconnect from ourselves. So, where does this idea come from? That humans are corrupt by default. Let's take a quick detour into history. Religious institutions, especially over the last 2 millennia, have often relied on one powerful strategy: control through guilt. Because if you convince someone they're broken from birth, they'll spend their whole life looking for someone else to fix them. Enter the doctrine of original sin. It's not just theological, it's psychological programming. It says, you are not enough. You cannot trust yourself. You must obey. And from there, entire systems of power were built. Systems that rely on fear, shame, and dependence. But Jung psychology invites a radically different perspective. He said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And here's the twist. Who we truly are might not be evil at all. In fact, Jung believed we come into this world as whole beings full of potential. Children aren't born narcissistic. They learn to become that way when their emotional needs are ignored, shamed, or manipulated. The shadow isn't our essence. It's what forms when we are taught to reject parts of ourselves. The anger, the sadness, the desire. We push them away, lock them in the basement of our psyche, and pretend they don't exist. But the truth is, those parts don't disappear. They fester. They evolve into behaviors that look a lot like what society calls evil. And here's the catch, it's not that most people are evil. It's that most people are disconnected from their soul. They're wounded, living unconsciously, acting from trauma, from abandonment, from stories that were never theirs to carry in the first place. And the system loves this because disconnected people are predictable and controllable. They buy things they don't need to fill a void. They don't understand. That's why this topic matters. Because until we question the stories we've inherited, we'll keep repeating them over and over again. Generational pain, emotional suppression, inner war. But imagine this instead, that we're not here to be fixed, but to remember, to return to the innate purity we came with, to integrate, not reject, our shadows. To love the parts we were told to hide. Carl Jung didn't give us all the answers, but he did offer a path. One of inner awareness, of radical honesty, of owning every part of our being, especially the ones we're afraid to look at. And that path doesn't lead to darkness. It leads to freedom. Before we continue, if you're someone who loves expanding your mind and exploring the deeper layers of life, make sure to subscribe to Fractal Wisdom, because what's coming next might just shift your entire perspective on why people hurt others and how you can free yourself from repeating those same unconscious patterns. Stay with me, because we're about to uncover why some people become narcissists, manipulators, and emotional users, and whether it's truly their nature or a tragic consequence of something deeper. Let's start with something you might have heard before. Hurt people hurt people. It's a phrase that gets tossed around a lot. But Carl Jung would say that it only scratches the surface, because pain doesn't just get passed down. It shapes identities. It creates masks, personas, entire psychological frameworks built around survival, not love. Jung introduced the concept of the shadow, the parts of ourselves we are taught to reject or disown. Anger, desire, vulnerability, weakness. These aren't inherently evil, but when a child is punished or shamed for expressing them, they get hidden. And what grows in their place is armor. A narcissist is often someone who was emotionally neglected, praised only for performance, not presence. Their self-worth got outsourced. So they built a false self, a polished mask to protect the emptiness inside. An abuser. Sometimes they were once voiceless victims. No one listened to their pain. So they learned to dominate, to control, to make others feel small because it gives them a temporary illusion of power when deep down they still feel powerless. A manipulator. That's often someone who was punished for honesty. So they learned to twist truth to stay safe, to bend reality to avoid rejection. See, what looks like evil on the surface is usually a defense mechanism that calcified over time. And Jung was clear on this. The more we deny the shadow, the more it controls us. This isn't to excuse harmful behavior, it's to understand it. Because when we stop asking what's wrong with this person and start asking what happened to this soul, that's when healing begins, individually and collectively. Jung also warned that society doesn't want us to heal. It needs us distracted, divided, and in pain. Because healed people don't buy into the system. Healed people don't numb themselves with endless consumption. They seek meaning. They create. They connect. But there's more. Most of what we call normal is actually trauma playing out on autopilot. People ghosting each other not out of cruelty, but out of an inability to sit with discomfort. People gaslighting not because they enjoy deception, but because they can't handle being wrong or vulnerable. People chasing validation because they never learned how to feel lovable without it. This is the world Jung warned us about. A world where people live unconsciously. Where the shadow rules silently in the background. Where we point fingers at others instead of turning inward. But here's the radical truth. We are not born narcissists. We are not born to manipulate. And we are not born to abuse. We become these things when our needs aren't met, our truth isn't heard, and our soul isn't nurtured. So no, this isn't our true nature. Our true nature is presence, connection, and wholeness. But wholeness isn't perfect. It includes the shadow. It makes space for mistakes, for messiness, for contradictions. Jung called this individuation, the lifelong process of becoming your true self. Not by avoiding darkness, but by integrating it. Owning your pain, learning from it, loving the parts of you were told not to show. And when people don't go through this process, they split. They live in fragments, in illusions, and in roles society gave them. That's why your coworker seems charming in public but terrifying in private. Why your partner seems deeply insecure but acts superior. Why your parents showed you love, but only when you behaved correctly. They're not monsters. They're fractured. And it all traces back to one question. Were they ever allowed to be whole? Most were not. And that's where the cycle starts. Generation after generation. But it can end with awareness. It can end with you. Because no one is born with darkness in their soul. No baby arrives into this world wanting to manipulate, dominate, or harm. They come as pure presence, full of sensation, curiosity, and wonder. They arrive whole. But something begins to fracture almost immediately. The soul doesn't speak in words. It speaks in energy and feelings. It wants to express, to connect, to be. But the world around it often isn't ready for that. Parents, as loving as they may be, are usually carrying wounds of their own. Societies, structured by control and conformity, reward behavior that fits in and shame what doesn't. So the soul begins to split. The parts of you that were celebrated, maybe your obedience, your smile, your silence, those were welcomed. But the parts that made others uncomfortable, the anger, the tears, the wildness, the sensitivity, the truth, those were punished. And so the child learns to exile parts of themselves, to hide their truth for safety, to trade authenticity for approval. This is where the shadow forms. Not because you were evil, but because you were human trying to survive. Carl Jung saw this not as a failure but a process. He said, One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light but by making the darkness conscious. But here's where it gets twisted. Society gave a name to this hidden part of ourselves, evil. It slapped that label on the shadow and said that that is bad. Get rid of it. Fight it. Shame it. Suppress it. And just like that, we stopped trying to understand ourselves. We started going to war with our own psyche. The idea of evil people became a tool of division. It gave us a reason to judge others, to fear ourselves, to justify punishment over compassion. It allowed institutions to build entire structures of power on the belief that humans are dangerous by nature and need external control to behave. But Jung would argue there are no evil people. There are only disconnected and wounded people. People so far from their own soul they've forgotten what love even feels like. And when we label someone bad, we do something devastating. We disconnect from them emotionally. We place them in a category outside of ourselves. They're not like me. It creates separation. But the truth is, shadow exists in all of us. It's universal. What changes lives is not fighting it but listening to it. When we start to see pain not as proof of evil but as a call for healing, everything changes. We stop pointing fingers. We start holding space. We become less reactive, more curious, more whole. So if you felt broken, flawed, or bad, let this land deeply. There is nothing wrong with your soul. There never was. You were just taught to fear the very parts of you that needed love the most. That ache inside you. That's not shame. It's your soul trying to come home. The anxiety, the overthinking, the low self-worth. Those aren't signs of weakness. They're the symptoms of disconnection. You've been trying to navigate the world while suppressing the deepest parts of who you are. And you're not alone. Carl Jung called the journey back to our true nature individuation. The process of reclaiming the parts of ourselves we had to abandon in order to belong. It's not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. It's a quiet, subtle, and deep work. You begin to notice the voice in your head that says, "I'm too much" or "I'll never be enough." And instead of believing it, you question it. Where did it come from? Who benefits from you believing it? You start sitting with the parts of you that feel angry, ashamed, or unlovable. And instead of exiling them, you invite them in. You listen. You soften. You stop trying to fix your darkness and begin to understand it. This is the work. Not perfection, but integration. And here's the thing Jung understood better than most. We don't find peace by rejecting our shadow. We find it by making it conscious, by letting it teach, guide, and complete us. When we ignore our shadow, it runs our lives from the background, projecting onto others, sabotaging our peace, lashing out in moments we don't understand. But when we acknowledge it, we begin to see the world more clearly. We recognize the wounded child behind the narcissist, the scared heart behind the control, the pain beneath the cruelty. And we stop reacting and start responding. We stop repeating cycles and start choosing differently. The world doesn't need more judgment. It needs more wholeness. People who are brave enough to sit with their pain, not push it away. People who choose compassion over punishment, clarity over fear, connection over separation. This is what healing looks like. Not constant happiness, but inner coherence, emotional honesty, the freedom to be all of who you are without shame. You came into this world pure, open, unafraid. You are still that. Beneath the conditioning, beneath the fear, beneath the mask, you are still whole. And the deeper you reconnect with that truth, the more you'll see it in others, even the ones who've lost their way. This isn't about spiritual bypassing. It's not about excusing harm or pretending everyone is good. It's about understanding what disconnects people from their soul in the first place and choosing not to add to that disconnection. Because every time you choose compassion over judgment, every time you meet your shadow with love instead of fear, every time you soften when you want to harden, you are doing something radical. You are healing the collective. If this resonated with you, let it be a moment of truth, a turning point. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What part of your own mind do you feel is still misunderstood by yourself or others? And if you haven't yet, subscribe to Fractal Wisdom. This channel is for souls who are done with surface-level answers and are ready to come home to themselves. Because the path back to wholeness isn't out there. It's in you. You've always had the map. You're just remembering how to read it.